Peace to the 12. Y'all see the title. Shocking evidence of Europe's first inhabitants. All right, we're going to get some pictorial evidence as well as books that were written in the 1800s to let you know who the original inhabitants of Europe were. And spoiler alert, they were of a brown complexion. All right, they were of a brown complexion. Also, I made this thumbnail. This look clean. But Luke 12 and 2, right? I'm going to start with Luke 12 and 2. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. And that's right, man. And I'm gonna be making it known again, because I've done videos of this in the past. I'll be letting it be known again that the first inhabitants of Europe were so-called black. All right, I say so-called black because black is not a real race. There is no such thing as a race known as black. But they were of a brown complexion. We're going to prove that. But you know what's so funny? Even though I titled this Shocking Evidence of Europe's First Inhabitants, it's only shocking to the masses of people because the evidence itself is not shocking at all. As a matter of fact, they already know that the first inhabitants of Europe are black. Hell, if you just get on Google, right? The first page is on Google, you type in the first European. It'll tell you what? It'll say, Homo erectus migrated from Africa to Europe before the emergence of modern humans. Homo erectus georgicus, which lived roughly 1.8 million years ago in Georgia, is the earliest hominid to have been discovered in Europe. So they straight tell you that the first people discovered in Europe were Africans. Okay, now they go into this 1.8 million. No, I don't believe it was 1.8 million years ago. No, I don't believe in Homo erectus. But they let you know that so-called Africans were the first inhabitants of Europe. Okay, and that's just one Google search, right? Let's get more. This is still on the first Google search. It says, where did the first Europeans come from? All modern humans, Russians and Australians included, are derived from an initial migration out of Africa. From the fossil record, this seems too. Yeah, that's what they keep saying. They keep going to this African narrative. And do I believe that everybody comes from Africa? No. Okay. But what it's telling you without just directly saying it, is that all modern humans come from the so-called black man, which is correct. Okay? Which is correct. Once again, you type in the first Europeans were dark skins on Google. Look what pops up. First result. Ancient DNA from archaeological skeletons show that Europeans had darker skin, hair, and eye pigmentation 5,000 years ago. So the ancient Europeans were so-called black, dark skins. Of course they were. But these are just Google. So that's why I said the shocking evidence is only to the masses, because they're not going to really touch on this in your normal history class. And your parents probably don't know this either. So it's shocking to the masses. But when it comes to scholars, historians, archaeologists, the top echelon of them, they already know the truth. They just hide it. I believe Chronicles of Judah made a statement years ago where he said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, brothers, our history is known, but it's hidden. And that is a very true statement. Our history is known. Known by who? Known by the people that write the history books. Our history is known, but it's hidden. Okay? Hence why on Google you type all these things in and they give you the results. All right, more things right here, right? Let's get were the first Europeans pale or dark skinned? Look, the skeletal and archaeological evidence made it clear that the first Europeans were probably dark skinned, not pale skinned. Europeans were dark skinned until 8,000 years ago. Were the first Europeans pale or dark skinned? The archaeological, anthropological, and genetic evidence indicated that the first Europeans were dark skinned sub-Saharan Africans who carried mtDNA haplogroup. Okay? First modern Britons had dark to black skin, Cheddar Man. The first modern Britons who lived about 10,000 years ago had dark to black skin. So, these are just regular Googles. All right, they ain't no big deal. But we're going to get to written historical evidence by actual people. But I just wanted to just get the quick Googles in there, because this lets you know right there, they already know the deal. National Geographic, Britain's dark-skinned, blue-eyed ancestor. This is Cheddar Man, by the way. This is what they believe Cheddar Man to have looked like. Smithsonian Magazine, early Britain had dark skin and light eyes. Cheddar Man, BBC, Cheddar Man DNA shows early Britain had dark skin. So they all know this, man. They all know this, but it's shocking to the masses. Last time I did a video on this, people couldn't believe it. They're like, wow, I didn't know this. Why? Because, they're not telling you about it. All right, look, can an African American have blue eyes? African Americans have blue eyes. African Americans with blue eyes are not unheard of, but they are pretty rare. There are a lot of ways for this to happen. Some possible ways an African American person might have ended up with blue eyes are Caucasian relatives in their ancestry. The most likely reason. Not true. Okay, the reason why so-called black people do not have blue eyes on average. Yeah, this is a lie. The reason we don't have blue eyes on average is because blue eyes are a recessive gene. Okay. Now, anyway, all that being said, now let's get the books that were written in the 1800s, 200 years ago or plus, 200 plus years ago. They were written about these findings. This is a man, William Boyd Dawkins. He was a British geoscientist. All right, he wrote this book, which was in 1880, and the book was titled Early Man in Britain and Its Place in the Tertiary Period. All right, and you can actually get this book for free. You can find this book for free on the internet. You just got to go to Open Library, and you can find this book, Early Man in Britain and His Place in the Tertiary Period. If you want to read it for yourself, you can actually find it. You just click read, and it'll pop up. I didn't pay for it. Now, in this book, we're going to go to page 200, or actually, we're going to go to page 323. Let's get this evidence down, okay? Page 323, which states, I'm going to read down to the highlighted portion. From the intimate manner in which they are associated with the Iberians by classical writers, coupled with their agreement in small stature and swarthy complexion, it may be inferred with tolerable certainty that they were related to each other. All right, the small, swarthy people he's talking about are the Etruscans. Okay, now, but we're just gonna keep going, and then I'm gonna get some pictures and stuff to clarify his statements, or to go with his statements rather. As the Frank to the Goth, or the Dane to the Norman, and they that belong to the same non-Aryan branch of the human race. So he's letting you know that these people that were in the Iberian Peninsula did not belong to the Aryan race, the Aryan branch. Okay, they were non-Aryan. This term Aryan, let's see if I can get it real quick. This term Aryan, the term Aryan means a member of a Caucasian Gentile race of Nordic type. All right, Aryan then later got changed to Indo-European. Really, there's no such thing as any of these things, because really they are the Idumeans. But let's just go with that. So Aryan became Indo-European, which really just goes back to a Caucasian. So he's saying in his findings that these people that inhabited the Iberian Peninsula were a swarthy race, and they were non-Aryans. Okay, meaning they were non-Caucasian. Okay, now let's keep going. It is also by no means improbable that the small, swarthy Etruscans, we'll get to the Etruscans in a minute, whose empire extended in the earliest times recorded by history north of the Alps and to Tyrol, and who held dominion also over Lombardy, belonged to the same non-Aryan stock, since they were contemporaneous and were driven away from their ancient possessions by the same invading peoples. So these Etruscans ended up being driven away by invading people. Who are those invading people? That would be the Aryans, the Indo-Europeans, the so-called Caucasians, the Idumeans. Okay? But, all right, a lot was said right here. I'm going to get to this in a minute, but let's touch on what he said so far, right? So he mentioned the Etruscans. He said the small Etruscans who were small and swarthy. Okay, so the Etruscans are a member of an ancient people of Etruria, Italy, between the Tiber and Arno rivers west and south of the Apennines. All right. Many features of Etruscan culture were adopted by the Romans, their successors, to power in the peninsula. So before the Romans took over, all right, the Idumeans, before the Romans took over, that place was owned by the Etruscans. And we know, based on this guy's findings, that the Etruscans were a non-Aryan stock, non-Caucasian, and they were small, swarthy Etruscans. We'll get with swarthy in a minute. All right? So he said they were swarthy. But first, that would mean that their depiction of the Etruscans that they tell you in conventional history is incorrect, And they already know it's incorrect because this guy came to this finding in the 1800s, 1880 to be specific. Yet, they give you a fake image of the Etruscans as Caucasian. But he stated that they were a non-Aryan stock, or what they'll say, Nordic type. But they're not Caucasian at all, and they were small and swarthy. Okay? The Etruscans and the first Romans. All right? These are false images of the Etruscans. All right, the first Romans were black people called the Etruscans. Read the full history, even though Caucasians disagree. Yeah, they disagree because they just got to keep the lie going. All right? But we know the truth. All right, and this term swarthy, when he says swarthy Etruscans, where is it at? When he says small swarthy Etruscans, the word swarthy, in the 1773 Samuel Johnson Dictionary, the word swarthy means dark of complexion, black, dusky, or tawny. The swarthy Africans, all right, so-called black people. Okay, so these swarthy Etruscans were so-called black people. They did not look like this. Okay, that's the point. All right, now let's get on some of the regions he said in this highlighted portion before I go down here. He said things like Lombardy and Tyrol. Well, Lombardy, for those of you that don't know, Lombardy is an Italian region, so they were over there. Tyrol is a West Austrian state, so over there by Austria. We haven't got there yet, but we'll get there. Now let's go back to the other parts he said in this page. Let's go down to here. This is still page 323, same book. In my belief, the Iberians of France and Spain, there's that word again, Iberians of France and Spain, the Silures of Wales, the Ligures of southern Gaul and northern Italy, and the small, dark Etruscans are to be looked upon as ethnological islands isolated by successive invasions. Pointing out, now this is the point, he's about to let you know that everybody that was in Europe, shocking evidence, everybody that was in Europe was so-called black, or were known as so-called black people, okay? Let's prove that. That's what he's about to say. Hold on. Small dark churches are to be looked upon ethnological islands isolated by successive invasions. Pointing out that if we could go deep enough to in the past time, we should find that the whole of Europe, so all of Europe, we should find that the whole of Europe was inhabited solely by a swarthy, non-Aryan population. All right? And that's interchangeable with Caucasian, a swarthy, non-Caucasian race. Aryan Caucasian, a non-Caucasian race. So that's the whole of Europe. So when these people try to say that, oh, they're Japs, no, because they did not originally inhabit Europe. They did not. Okay? Now, let's go back. Did I highlight the Aboriginal part? Or is that another part? All right, let's continue. This is page 324. With regard to the rest of the peninsula, sufficiently accurate observations have not yet been made to justify any conclusions as to the exact areas now occupied by the descendants of the Iberian Aborigines and Celtic invaders. And by the way, the ancient Celts were so-called black as well. I'll do a video on that in due time. Well, I mean, he already told you anyway that he already told you originally that the whole of Europe was swarthy non-Aryan population, which links directly up with what Google was saying. The original people of Europe were dark skins, which is the truth, by the way. But let's keep going. With regard to the rest of the peninsula, sufficiently accurate observations have not yet been made to justify any conclusions as to the exact area now occupied by the descendants of Iberian Aborigines and Celtic invaders. This is a picture we type in Aborigines, right? Aborigines. What does Aboriginal mean? Aboriginal means first, earliest, existing from the beginning. So existing from the beginning inhabitants, the first inhabitants, the early inhabitants of Europe were so-called black. Okay? Aborigine, a person, animal, or plant in a country or region from earliest times. The first inhabitants. Ab origin, from the beginning. All right, ab origin is Latin for from the beginning. And the beginning peoples of Europe were dark skinned. Okay. You know, I could have ended the video there, but no. You know, y'all know how I do. We get thorough. Now let's go to this part. The latter have equally handed down to him their dark complexion and lithe active forms. I do not know that any important physical differences has been observed between the Moors and the Iberians. So he's saying there's literally no difference between a Moor and the Iberian. There's no physical notable difference between a Moor and an Iberian. We're touching on the Moors in a minute. And it is very probable that the two are closely allied together and connected with the Berbers of northern Africa, considered by Professor Busk to belong to the same stock as the Iberians. All right, now let's touch on what was stated. The term Moor, according to 1773 dictionary, Samuel Johnson, the term Moor goes to a Negro, a blackamoor, a Negro. All right, the Negro's belly, the Moor is with child. All right, that's what Moor goes to. Negro. All right, blackamoor, a man by nature of a black complexion, a Negro. Okay, and these are some pictures of some Moors. Portrait of Moor chieftain. This is a Moor. So I mean, look at him, so-called black man. All right, Moorish rulers. There's some more pictures of Moors. Painting from the book Comentaros de las Cosas de Aragon, 1878, depicting Moors, meaning unknown. Look at these people, so-called black people. Okay. Here's some more pictures of Moors. Here's a Moor in a headdress. All right. Head study of a young Moor. The Moor King, 1471 to 1546, Ferrari Gadanzio. All right. Now going back to this term Aragon, I don't know where I found it at, but I mentioned Aragon somewhere. I know I did. Oh, Costa Aragon. Aragon is a region of Spain. Coat of arms Aragon. This is a coat of arms Aragon, Spain. As you can see, there's so-called black men on this shield, on this crest. Lord of the Rings has a character known as Aragorn, which is loosely based off of Aragon. So really, when you see Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, his complexion, what he looks like would be incorrect. If Middle Earth was real, Middle Earth would look like these people. Okay, but I'm going to do videos on the Middle Ages at another time. But in Aragon, like I told you, it's a community of Spain. All right, Aragon. Remember this painting. Da Aragon. Okay. And Iberia is Iberian, relating to denoting Iberia or the countries of Spain and Portugal. All right, the Iberian Peninsula is Spain, which is next to France, Portugal. All right, you see the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, and what this man said was that the Moors, which go back to Negro, the Moors, there was no difference between the Moors and the Iberians. There's no physical difference, meaning they were both so-called black people. Okay, the Moors and the Iberians. Yet, like they lied again, like they lied about the Etruscans, right? Like they lie about the appearance of the Etruscans. They lie about the appearance of the Iberians. Because when you get on Google and you type in, oh, the Iberians, this is who pops up. DNA from ancient Phoenicians shows Iberian ancestry. Acting like that's what the Phoenicians look like. We're going to touch on Phoenician in a minute. First DNA from ancient Phoenicians shows European ancestry. Well, if the first Phoenicians show European ancestry, that's because the original Europeans were so-called black. We just got through that. The whole of Europe was inhabited by swarthy non-Aryan populations. Okay? Ancient DNA study finds Phoenician from Carthage had European ancestry. All right? He would not look like this because, first of all, we're going to touch on Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were so-called black. Let's prove that. This is the Bible dictionary. The term Philistine. All right, the term Philistine, famous people that were at war with our people, being the Israelites. The Philistines were at war with our people. All right, the Philistines were Hamites. All right, Philistine, an inhabitant of Philistia, descendants of Mizraim. All right, look, Philistines, a tribe allied to the Phoenicians. So the Phoenicians go back to the Philistines. The Philistines go back to Mizraim, all right, which is their predecessor, the descendants of Mizraim, their forefather. Mizraim is a son of Ham, all right, who is a progenitor of the dark races. But we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so the Phoenicians would not have looked like this. And let's prove that right now, actually. Let's prove that right now. 1 Chronicles chapter 1 and verse 8. The sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, Put and Canaan. So the sons of Ham, you get Mizraim, right? Mizraim is once again, the predecessor to the Phoenicians, the predecessor to the Philistines. He's their forefather. Okay? He's their forefather. You go to verse 11, 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 11. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Anumim, and Lahabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Kashluhim. Now look, Kashluhim, of whom came the Philistines and Capthurim. All right, so out of the Philistines comes from Kashluhim. Kashluhim is a descendant of Mizraim. Mizraim is a descendant of Ham. Okay? All right, now look, let's deal with Hamites. Ham, the youngest son, this is the Compact Bible Dictionary Zondervan version. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races. So the originator of the dark races, not the Negroes. So the Negroes are excluded, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. Which would mean what? That the Moors who are of Negro are not Hamites, all right, but something else entirely, which we know to be the Jacobites, the Israelites, but another video for another time. But we know that out of the progenitor of the dark races, you get Mizraim, who was a son of Ham. Mizraim is where we get the Philistines, which would make the Philistines so-called black, which would make the Phoenicians so-called black, which would make this image a fake-ass image, a false image, which would make these Iberian images fake as well. All right? And also from Philistine is where you get Palestine. Palestine was originally denoted only the seacoast of the land of Canaan, inhabited by the Philistines. So Palestine was originally inhabited by so-called blacks, Hamites, Phoenicians, Philistines. From Philistia, the name of the land of the Philistines came to be extended to the whole of Palestine. Many scholars identify the Philistines with the Pelethites. So Palestine goes back to Philistine. All right. And the Philistines were Africans, so-called black Africans, which would mean this. What? These are not the original inhabitants of Palestine. Okay? All right. So when people say, "Oh, those people over in our land, they're not the original inhabitants," yeah, well, neither is it for Palestine. A lot of these people are hybrids or migrants, depending on what. And that makes me think of Luke 21 and 24, which states that, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be laid away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled." The term Gentile goes back to the term heathen or gentilis or ethnos, which means the heathen nations, the non-Israelites. Well, that's only sometimes, because sometimes a Gentile can be an Israelite foreigner. I've done videos on that in the past. You can watch a video I made titled "How We Became Gentiles." But our land will be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time the Gentiles be fulfilled. Gentiles is plural, so it's not just one nation, but there are multiple nations. Gentiles plural, multiple nations that are over there in our landmass, all right, of the Middle East, all right, specifically our portion, all right. But yeah, let's keep going. Page 325, same book. Being occupied respectively by dark peoples with black hair and eyes, people with brown hair or gray and brown eyes, and people with light complexions and eyes. So we're going down to here. We may therefore conclude that the swarthy inhabitants of France, the original inhabitants of France were swarthy, the original inhabitants of France were black, at the present time are the shortest and the fair, the tallest. The departments noirs are mainly entered in the old province of Aquitaine of Augustus, of which the jet black eyes and hair and swarthy complexions. So the people of Aquitania, the people of Aquitaine, were of a swarthy complexion as well. All right, and the original French were so-called black. Okay, the original inhabitants. All right, the term swarthy, once again, dark colored, especially of skin. Black person, black, Negroes, swart. Aquitaine is a French region. All right, and Aquitaine's flag was a lion. All right, which means that these people were more likely of the tribe of Judah. The lion symbolizes Judah out of the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, which means that these people are just LARPing. And Eleanor of Aquitaine did not look like this. I can't wait to do a video on the Middle Ages. It'll be in the future. But yeah. And mind you, let me put this in perspective. Like I told you, this guy was able to come to these findings in the 1800s. So you think they don't know now, 200 years ago? Yeah, they know, man. They're just hiding it. They're lying. They're giving you images like this. All right, they just want you to believe that you was nothing but a slave until they came and rescued you, which is just not the case. Okay? Page 328, Early Man in Britain. Same book. The present dark Bretons are contemporaneous with dark inhabitants of Aquitaine, meaning the dark inhabitants of France. The dark Bretons, the original people of Britain. All right. The Iberians embraced that province. Yeah, the blacks of France. All right. And the ancient Ligurians are represented by the dark, small inhabitants of the Harz and Basis Alps, who are not distinguishable from the rest of the small, dark French peoples. So they're all the same people. They're not distinguishable from each other. They have the same phenotypes. All right. The same stock as the Iberians. They're all related. So the Spanish, the Iberians, once again, let me go back. Hold on. Did I go past it? Oh, let me just do it this way. The Iberian Peninsula is related to the France. They're all the same people. That's what he was saying. All right, they're not distinguishable from the small French peoples, from the Iberians. So the Spanish and Portuguese original, they are the same people. Okay, now let's go to another book. Another book titled Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race by Thomas William Shore. Another book that was written in the 1800s. Actually, I believe he wrote it when he died, so it would have been in 1906. I think is when it was published. But he was born in 1840. But Thomas William Shore comes to the same conclusions with the so-called Vikings. Okay? Once again, that dude already told you all of Europe was inhabited by dark-skinned peoples. But let's get this book, Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race by Thomas William Shore. We're going to go to page 103. All right? And we're going to read what's written. One of the facts concerning the color and hair of eyes of the people in different counties of England at the present time brought to light by scientific observation, so science, is that there is a higher percentage of people of a mixed brown type living in Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Wiltshire, and Dorset than in most other counties, except those in Cornwall and on the old Celtic borders. Yeah, the old Celts. Once again, the Celts were originally black. The Celts were originally black. The inhabitants of these countries are the darkest. All right, the brown peoples. All right. And they were dark brown people to black. All right, they were different shades of brown. Let's go to, and let me say this too. This is where you get the term, this is where you get the real term tall, dark, and handsome from. This is where you get the term tall, dark, and handsome from. They were talking about a so-called black man, believe it or not. Wasn't no vampire with a tan. Okay? Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race, page 104. Same book. Is there any other way in which the origin of these mixed brown people surrounded by others of a somewhat fairer complexion can be explained. You know, but you're going to find out that the original inhabitants of Europe were so-called, or I already found it. You already found that out, but you're going to find out that the Vikings, yes, there were black Vikings. An alternative explanation is that people of a darker race, people of a darker race, so-called black people, people of a darker race may have come with the Angles, Saxons, or Danes. By the way, Danes go back to the tribe of Dan, and have settled largely in these parts of the country. Right? There is circumstantial evidence that people of a brown or dark complexion did come into England during the time of both the Saxon and the Danish settlements. And this may now be summarized. All right, so they were around. Brown people were definitely around in England, amongst the Saxons, the Danes. All right, but we're going to keep going. First, we have the evidence that the Wends were among the settlers either during the early period or latter in alliance with the Danes. The Wends, specifically so-called by the Germans, included some tribes much darker than the Saxons and Angles, so very dark, as the remnant of the race still called the Wends living on. So the Wends were so-called black. Yet when I type into Google, they're lying again. When I type in Wends, they give me a picture of a so-called white woman, a Caucasian, right? Which is not the case. Where was I at? The Wends, specifically so-called by the Germans, included some tribes which are darker than the Saxons and Angles. So the Wends, all right, which were the dark ones. Really, they were all dark, but that's another video for another day. I did do a video titled Black Vikings that you can check out. But they are the darkest people in northern Germany. So they were the darkest people in northern Germany. According to the census, from 26 to 29% of the children of the Wendish descent of Lusatia, south of Dresden, were shown by this census to be brunettes. Now, when it says that they were brunettes, the term brunette actually means a brown person. All right, it does not mean what you think it means, which is a brown-haired white woman. The term brunette originally meant a dark in complexion, having a brownish tone to the skin. All right, dark complexion. Brown. All right, brown skinned. That's what brunette really means. And once again, the word Negro goes back to the word brown, because we're really different shades of brown, and black is not a race. So brown, brunette. All right, now let's go back to what he said. Now let's go through here. All the Slav nations are not dark. So he's letting you know that all of the Slavs were not dark. They were not dark skinned. All the Slavs were not black. That's what he's letting you know. Well, which brings me back to the term slave. See, the term Slav actually originates from the term slave actually originates from the term Slav. Let's prove that real fast. Slave, originally Slav. See, Slav. One of the people who inhabit most of Eastern Europe. Slav, dumb, which meant both race and language. So it was a race of Slavs. And once again, what did he state? He said, all the Slav nations are not dark. All right, so he's saying all the Slav nations are Caucasians, is what he's saying. All right, well, the term slave, Samuel Johnson's dictionary, it is said to have its origin from Slav, 1773. Slave. All right, slave and Slav. Slave comes from Slav. All right, so when you think of a slave, this is how they program you. When you think of a slave, you think of a so-called black person, but the original people who were called slaves were the Slavs. All right, which were not so-called black people, but Caucasians. He said all the Slav nations are not dark. All right, but they get you through repetition code. All right. Repetition, repeating an action or an event. They keep giving you all these damn slave movies to have you think that slave is synonymous with you, but slave comes from the term Slav, which was pointed towards the Slavic people of Eastern Europe who were Caucasians. All the Slav nations are not dark. That's what he said. All right. Now, Let's get some pictorial evidence of that. This is something called a slave sale by Jose Jimenez Aranda. It's a slave sale, a Slav sale, if you will. Her master's choice, Fabio Fabi, our so-called black man, and this is a Slav. Okay? So yes, that's where the term slaves comes from. All right? And this was their overlord, believe it or not. Let's get some more. Let's get some more on this book. You got names. Wanted to point this out. I wanted to point this out too. Origins of the Anglo-Saxon race. Name like Blackman Stone, which means Blackman, and it's spelled B-L-A-C-K-E. Manstone. It means black man stone. Is what it means. And the term black. First of all, at Urban Dictionary, black means act of being ghetto. Black, becoming black. Black means the color black. So that's where the black crest comes from, the term black. So Blackman Stone was denoting that so-called black people lived there. Is Blackman a Viking name? Blackman means a dark man. The name once given to Danish kings who settled in southern Scotland. Why was that? Because those Danes, those black people, they were so-called black people and they were dark-skinned. Okay? Period, man. All right, page 106, same book, Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race. All right, we're making time. I think I'll be able to beat it in an hour. Yeah, I'm 30 minutes in. Let's get it. Page 106, Origins of the Anglo-Saxon Race. Pay attention. There is an addition evidence that points to Norwegians of a brunette appearance. Norwegian of a brunette appearance. Okay? Norwegians of a brunette appearance. Brunette, darker complexion, brownish tone. All right? See that? Once again, Negro, brown. Appearance as another source whence brown complexion people may have come into England. They didn't may have come to England. They were in England. Okay? Which differs from the usual Norwegian type, and this has been referred by anthropologists to be to a very ancient settlement, going back to the first ancient, that they're of the prehistoric brown race. So the brown race goes prehistory, prehistoric, the original, aboriginal, originals, the so-called original black Norwegians. They're the original Norwegians. All right, Norwegian type, and this has been referred by anthropologists to be a very ancient settlement. They're of the prehistoric brown race that survives in the highlands of Central Europe and is known as the brown alpine race. Okay? The race is believed to have extended before the dawn of history. Yeah, like aboriginals before the dawn of history. Let's go back. See if I can find that again. 1 second. The originals, aboriginal, right? First, earliest, from the beginning, existing from the beginning, prehistoric, right? So let's go back to where we just left off. The race is believed to have extended before the dawn of history, the originals, much further northwards in Germany. The brown people of Norway are well seen in Joderin, where Arbo found the blonde and really dark-haired people about equally represented. The Norwegian brunettes, the Norwegian brown people, differ from typical blondes of that country in two other particulars, and then he goes into the skull shape and all that. The broad-headed people of these districts darker as a whole, but in them the broad-headed individuals tend to be darker than the other types. All right. Well, once again, he used words like prehistoric. All right, very ancient settlement, and this race is transcends what we know of documented history, the dawn of history, which means what? When you watch that movie Thor and you see Valkyrie and you see Heimdall, Tessa Thompson, Idris Elba, that is correct. They would be the original people of the Norse mythology. So all these people that
Why they gender swapping?
yeah, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. All right, all those people that got mad when they saw these people play Valkyrie and Idris Elba. That tells you the director knew who the original inhabitants were as well. And I touched on this in a video I did titled Real Black Vikings. You can go check that out. But let's get one more page out of this book before I get out of here, right? Our Darker Forefathers. By the way, he named this chapter Our Darker Forefathers. All right, so they already know who was the first inhabitants. Now, whether the Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire brunettes are partly due to the settlement of Wends and Norwegians of the dark type, dark Norwegians, Wends. Let's go down to here. This consideration of the probable origin of the great proportion of brunettes in two of the South Midland counties of England leads us to that of the color names. All right, so the names like brown, that indicates that they were brown skinned. The color names as surnames and place names, which may have probably have been derived from their original settlers. So the original settlers were brown. All right, colored. Once again, aboriginal, the first. For example, there is the common name brown. This has been derived from the Anglo-Saxon brun or brune, signifying brown. It is not reasonable to doubt that when our forefathers called a man brun or brown, they gave him this name as descriptive of his brown complexion. All right. Probability the brunettes were commonly supported by the frequent references to persons named Brun in Anglo-Saxon literature. Brune was a name not confined to England, so it was past England, in the Anglo-Saxon and later periods. On the contrary, we find that it was common name in ancient Germany. So Brun was a common name in Germany as well. The black Germans. As a matter of fact, look at the famous people with the name Brown. Remember what he said. All right, Brown. 1773 dictionary. Braun, Bran, Brown, born, burn. Comes from the color. It denotes from brown. Right? And there are many famous people, so-called black people, with the last name Brown. Meaning they probably have black German or black Norwegian or black Wendish lineage. Like James Brown, Chris Brown, Jim Brown, Corrupt, which his real name is Ricardo Emmanuel Brown, Mel B, her real name is Melanie Brown, Dustin Brown, a tennis player. You have a show titled Tyler Perry's Meet the Browns, singer Ruth Brown, rapper Danny Brown. Okay. So they could very well be descendants from Europeans, black Europeans, original Europeans, Aboriginal Europeans. All right. So don't believe that narrative that all so-called black people got their names from a damn slave master. That's a damn lie. Okay. All right. And in conclusion of the matter, all these far right nationalists who, let's keep Europe European, all that stuff. Hey, they're just LARPing, man. They're just LARPing. They're just pretending. They're just playing make-believe because they are not the original inhabitants of those lands. And we have proven that in this video. And really they're just inheriting lies, which makes you think of Jeremiah 16:19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, the nations, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies. Vanity and things wherein there is no profit. Yeah, inheriting lies. We know who the original Europeans were according to science, according to knowledge, according to scripture, according to everything, man. And it was not its current inhabitants. All right, and it wasn't through evolution. We got deported. There's a book you can get titled Jacobite Gleanings, which touch on that. Benjamin Franklin made a book titled Observations of concerning the increase of mankind or something to that effect. where he touches on that matter of deporting so-called black people from Europe as well. Okay? And that's in conclusion of that matter, man. Once again, that's shocking evidence of Europe's first inhabitants, man. All right, and let me say this too as a don't get caught up in the pro-black Pan-African thing. Listen, we were everywhere, brothers. All right, the so-called black man was everywhere. All right, specifically the Israelite man, he was everywhere on the earth. Okay, and I'm gonna keep revealing that to be truth, man. All right, with that, I say peace to the 12. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High Yahawah, in the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah being the name of the Heavenly Father, who is commonly known as God, and yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who is commonly known as Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace, to you people listening and learning, to you people doing this work in truth and sincerity, and to you elders that's been doing this thing before me, man. All right, with that, I say shalom. I'm going to get up out of here. Peace.